Chapter 1. The Shadow of Lucas Mendez. Cigarette smoke danced in the dim light of Lucas Mendez's small office, a private detective with sharp eyes and a soul marked by secrets of the past. Nightfall descended heavily upon 1940s São Paulo, and the city was shrouded in a veil of mist and mystery. Lucas, with his black hair always slicked back and his chin covered by the shadow of a beard, was the perfect picture of a man who had seen it all. He lived and worked in the darkest part of the city, where the whispers of the walls told stories no one else could hear. Lucas Mendez was known for his cunning and relentless way of solving cases. At 38, his eyes bore a deep sadness, a reminiscence of a lost love and a war that had stripped him of his innocence. His apartment was modest, with old furniture and piles of faded newspapers reporting solved crimes. His only constant companion was the bottle of whiskey on his desk, a bitter reminder of sleepless nights. The rain drummed on the window, creating a melancholic melody that filled the silence. Lucas stared into the darkness outside, lost in his own thoughts. The phone in the corner of the office rang, a shrill sound that pierced the heavy air. He picked up the receiver with some reluctance. Lucas Mendez, private detective. The voice on the other end was feminine, low, and urgent. "Mr. Mendez, I need your help. I found something I can't ignore. A letter, anonymous. It's about the Mansion of Mirrors." Lucas frowned. The Mansion of Mirrors was a legend in the city, a place shrouded in mystery and superstition. It was said that those who ventured through its corridors never emerged the same. "Go on," he encouraged, lighting another cigarette. "The letter says there's a dark secret in the mansion. Something terrible happened there, and I feel like I'm in danger. Please, I need you to come as soon as possible. My name is Helena Montero." Lucas jotted down the name and address she provided, feeling a shiver run down his spine. He hung up the phone and stood still for a moment, the sound of the rain growing around him. He grabbed his hat and overcoat, turned off the office light, and stepped out into the cold, damp night. The city seemed to breathe in his absence, shadows moving with a life of their own. He got into his car, an old Ford that roared in protest as it started, and drove through the wet streets towards the mansion. With each passing mile, the mystery deepened, and Lucas felt he was about to become involved in something much larger than he had imagined. Arriving at the imposing Mansion of Mirrors, the structure stood like a sentinel from a bygone era, its dark windows reflecting fragments of the soul of anyone who dared to look. Lucas took a deep breath and prepared to enter a world where reality blurred with illusion. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Letter. The rain continued to fall heavily as Lucas Mendez arrived at the Mansion of Mirrors. The imposing structure loomed before him, each dark window seeming to silently observe his arrival. He extinguished his cigarette on the wet ground and walked to the front door, which opened with a sinister creak. Inside, the air was cold and charged with a strange electricity. Helena Montero waited anxiously in the mansion's foyer. Tall and elegant, with dark hair cascading in waves over her shoulders, she exuded an aura of mystery and urgency. Her brown eyes, deep and distressed, met Lucas's with a silent plea. "Mr. Mendez, thank you for coming so quickly," said Helena, her voice trembling slightly. Lucas removed his hat, letting the water drip onto the polished marble floor. "Let's get straight to the point, Miss Montero. Where is the letter?" She led Lucas to a parlor decorated with antique furniture and mirrors that seemed to multiply the image of anyone who dared to pass through. On a mahogany table lay an open letter. The yellowed paper was stained and worn by time, but the handwritten words were clear and disturbing. Lucas picked up the letter and began to read aloud. "To whoever finds this letter, know that the Mansion of Mirrors holds dark secrets. A terrible crime occurred here, and those who dare to investigate are destined to disappear. If you value your life, leave while you can." He looked up at Helena, who appeared even paler under the dim light of the lamps. "When did you receive this?" "It arrived last night, slipped under the door," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. "I was alone, and nearly died of fright. The mansion has always given me chills, but this letter confirmed my worst fears." Lucas frowned. "Is there anyone else in the house?" Helena hesitated before answering. "Yes, there are the servants and my brother Carlos, but he doesn't believe any of this. He thinks it's all superstition." Lucas tucked the letter into his coat pocket. "I'll need to speak with everyone and examine every corner of this mansion. Is there anything else I should know?" Helena glanced around, as if afraid of being overheard. "There are rumors that the mirrors, they're special. They say they hold memories, or something worse." Lucas nodded, already feeling the weight of the mystery growing around him. "Let's begin. Take me to your brother." They walked down the corridor, the shadows from the mirrors following them like silent specters. Each step Lucas took echoed in the empty mansion, and he knew he was just beginning to uncover the secrets hidden behind every reflection. Chapter 3. Encounters in the Mansion. Lucas followed Helena through the winding corridors of the Mansion of Mirrors. Each mirror reflected fragments of their figures, creating the illusion that they were being watched by multiple eyes. With every step, the feeling of unease grew, as if the mirrors themselves held dark secrets. At the end of a corridor decorated with faded tapestries, Helena opened a set of double doors that led to a luxuriously decorated living room. In the center, seated in a leather armchair, was Carlos Montero. He stood up as they entered, his expression serious and distrustful. "So, you're the detective," Carlos said, crossing his arms. "I hope you know what you're getting into. This house is not for the faint-hearted." Lucas stepped forward, analyzing the man before him. Carlos had an arrogant posture and eyes that seemed to constantly assess the next move of those around him. "I know exactly what I'm getting into," Lucas replied, his voice calm and steady. "Why do you think this letter is just superstition?" Carlos let out a dry laugh. "Because this house is full of old stories and unfounded fears. My sister is very impressionable. There's nothing here but walls and mirrors." Helena intervened, her voice laden with frustration. "Carlos, you know it's not just that. I've heard things, seen things that can't be explained." Lucas observed the two, sensing the tension between the siblings. "Helena, what exactly have you heard and seen?" She looked directly at Lucas, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and determination. "At night I hear whispers, as if someone is speaking from the other side of the mirrors. And I've seen reflections that shouldn't be there. People who aren't in the room." Carlos shook his head, exasperated. "It's just tricks of light and your imagination." Lucas thought for a moment. "What about the servants? Have they mentioned anything strange?" "Some have," Helena replied. "Maria, the housekeeper, always talks about shadows that move on their own. And Jorge, the gardener, swears he saw figures passing through the corridors at night." Lucas frowned. "I want to speak with them, now. And I also want to explore this mansion. I need to understand what's happening here." Carlos sighed, throwing his hands up. "Do what you want, detective, but don't expect to find anything beyond ghost stories." Lucas followed Helena to the kitchen where Maria was busy cleaning. She was an elderly woman, with white hair and hands calloused from work. "Maria, this is Detective Lucas Mendez. He needs to know about the strange things you mentioned," Helena said. Maria looked at Lucas, her eyes filled with an ancient and fearful wisdom. "Sir, this house is cursed. Since I started working here, I've seen things no one should see. Sometimes I feel like someone is watching me. And these mirrors, they are not normal. They reflect more than reality." "Have you seen anyone in the mirrors, someone who shouldn't be there?" Lucas asked, leaning forward. "Yes," Maria replied, her voice almost a whisper. "A woman, dressed in white with empty eyes. She haunts me. And I'm not the only one who has seen her." Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. He knew he was just beginning to scratch the surface of whatever was happening in the mansion of mirrors. And as he looked at Helena and Maria, he saw the same determination to uncover the truth. Chapter 4. The First Mystery. The tension in the mansion's kitchen was palpable, as if Maria's words had ensnared everyone in a web of fear and uncertainty. Lucas knew the investigation was just beginning, and every detail could be crucial. "We need flashlights," Lucas said in a low voice as they left the kitchen. "I want to explore the darkest corners of the mansion, where shadows might hide secrets." Helena nodded and went to fetch the flashlights. Lucas stood alone in the corridor for a moment, observing the mirrors that seemed to follow him with invisible eyes. He felt a shiver down his spine, but pushed the thought away as Helena returned, holding 2 flashlights. "Let's start with the upper floor, Lucas. So Torrance, Soluk said, taking one of the flashlights. "I want to see every room, every corner." They ascended the main staircase, which creaked under their feet. Upstairs, the atmosphere was even more oppressive. Helena led Lucas to the first room, an old guest room that seemed untouched for decades, walls covered with faded wallpaper, furniture draped with white sheets. Lucas illuminated every corner, searching for any sign of abnormality. "This was my aunt's room," Helena whispered in the darkness. "She died here, alone." Lucas nodded, noting the information. "Let's move to the next." They proceeded to the master bedroom, a grand space with a canopy bed and mirrors, covering almost all the walls. Lucas felt a strange presence there, as if being watched from all angles. "This room—" "Something happened here," Lucas murmured, more to himself than to Helena. "Yes," Helena replied hesitantly. "My father, he disappeared from this room. He was never seen again." Lucas illuminated each mirror, looking for anything out of the ordinary. That's when he noticed something strange in the largest mirror near the bed. There was a small stain, almost imperceptible, but it seemed to pulse with its own light. "Helena, look at this," he said, approaching the mirror. Helena stepped closer, her eyes wide. "What is it?" Lucas touched the stain and felt a slight tingling at his fingertips. "I don't know, but it's something that shouldn't be here." Suddenly, a sharp scream echoed through the mansion, coming from the lower floor. Lucas and Helena exchanged alarmed looks before rushing to the source of the sound. They reached the main hall, where they found Maria, the housekeeper, trembling with fear. "Maria, what happened?" Lucas asked, helping the woman to her feet. It's the mirror in the corridor," she stammered. "I saw something there. Something that shouldn't be there." Lucas and Helena ran to the mentioned mirror, a large ornate mirror at the end of the corridor. As they approached, Lucas clearly saw the reflection of a woman in white, her eyes empty and her expression anguished. She reached out as if she wanted to escape the mirror. "My God," Helena murmured, clutching Lucas's arm. Lucas remained calm, observing the figure. "This is more than superstition. We need to understand what's happening here, and fast." The figure in the mirror disappeared as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving Lucas and Helena with more questions than answers. But he knew he was on the right track. The mystery of the Mansion of Mirrors was just beginning to unfold. Chapter 5. Secrets and Lies. "We need to speak with the other staff," said Lucas, trying to keep his voice calm. "They might know more than they're letting on." Helena nodded, still trembling slightly. "I'll call Jorge, the gardener. He usually works in the back garden at this hour." As they waited, Lucas observed the mirrors, his mind buzzing with questions. What were those apparitions? Why did the mirrors seem connected to all the strange events in the mansion? Soon, Jorge entered the hall, covered in dirt and wearing a worried expression. "Miss Helena, what's happening? I heard a scream." "Jorge," interrupted Lucas, We need to know if you've seen anything strange in the mirrors of the mansion." Jorge hesitated, looking from Helena to Lucas. "Well, sir, I've seen things I can't explain. Figures moving. Shadows where there shouldn't be shadows." "Figures like a woman in white?" asked Lucas, observing Jorge's reaction. The gardener turned pale. "Yes, exactly. I always thought it was my imagination, but if you've seen it too, maybe there's something more." Lucas turned to Helena. "We'll need to inspect all the mirrors one by one." As they walked through the corridors, Lucas and Helena spoke in low voices. "Helena, is there anything else you haven't told me?" asked Lucas. "Something about your family, about the mansion's history?" Helena bit her lip, hesitating. "Well, there's an old story. My grandfather always said our family was cursed, that the mirrors were portals to another dimension, a place where spirits roam eternally." "And do you believe that?" Lucas pressed. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I'm scared, Lucas. More and more convinced that there's a terrible truth hidden here." Suddenly the sound of breaking glass echoed through the corridor. Lucas ran towards the sound, with Helena close behind. They arrived at a room where a mirror lay shattered on the floor. In the center of the shards, a small wooden box was partially exposed. "This wasn't here before," said Helena, surprised. Lucas picked up the box and carefully opened it. Inside, there was a series of old letters, all yellowed with age. He began reading the first one, his eyes widening with each line. "These letters talk about experiments with the mirrors, something about trapping souls in them." Helena looked at Lucas, horrified. "Then it's true. The mirrors, they are cursed." "I don't know if it's a curse or something more scientific," said Lucas, closing the box. "But one thing is certain, someone here knows more than they're saying. We need to find out who." Chapter 6. The Discovery of the Mirrors. Lucas held the small wooden box firmly, the letters inside revealing long-buried secrets. Beside him, Helena trembled, absorbing the revelation that the mirrors could be more than mere decorative objects. "We need to understand the origin of these mirrors," Lucas said. "Something tells me there's more than just superstition involved." They descended the stairs to the mansion's library, a vast room filled with dusty books and dark wooden shelves. Lucas knew that if there were any clues about the mirrors, they would be hidden there. They began to search through the books, looking for any mention of mirrors, curses, or experiments. After some time, Helena pulled out a thick, dust-covered volume. "Lucas, look at this." She opened the book to a page marked by a red ribbon. "It's a diary. It appears to be from my great-grandfather, Henrique Montero." Lucas stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. The diary entries were detailed, describing experiments conducted with mirrors, acquired from a mysterious European craftsman. Henrique believed the mirrors had the ability to capture and reflect not just images, but also souls. "These mirrors," Lucas read aloud, "are capable of capturing the essence of those who gaze into them for too long. Once trapped, the soul is condemned to wander among the reflections without rest." Helena shuddered. "My great-grandfather was a disturbed man. I always thought these stories were exaggerations." "It might be more than that," Lucas replied. "He was trying to create a form of immortality or a type of spiritual prison. But why?" Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Lucas and Helena turned quickly, ready for anything. The figure that emerged at the door was Carlos, Helena's brother. His expression was darker than ever. "So, you found it," he said, his voice laden with disdain. "Enrique's diary. I always knew he kept dark secrets." "You knew about this?" Helena asked, incredulous. "Of course I knew," Carlos replied, stepping closer, "but I thought they were just the ravings of a mad old man, until I started seeing things in the mirrors, things that shouldn't be there." Lucas narrowed his eyes. "Why didn't you tell us earlier?" Carlos sighed, his expression weary. "Because I'm afraid. Afraid of what this means for us, for our family. And because there's more." Enrique wasn't the only one conducting experiments. Someone here in the mansion continued his work. Who? Helena asked, her voice breaking. I don't know, Carlos admitted, but I have my suspicions, and if we want to solve this, we need to confront everyone who lives here. Lucas nodded. Let's gather everyone in the main hall. It's time to get some answers. Chapter 7. Danger approaches. In the main hall, the tension was palpable. Lucas, Helena, and Carlos were surrounded by the mansion's staff. Maria, the housekeeper, Jorge, the gardener, and Clara, the cook. Each of them wore expressions of fear and curiosity, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden gathering. We are all here because something very serious is happening in this mansion, Lucas began, his voice firm. The mirrors are not what they seem. There are dark secrets hidden in them, and we need to find out who is behind this. Maria crossed her arms, her face pale. I always knew there was something wrong with this house. Ever since I started working here, I felt we were not alone. Jorge, Clara, Lucas continued, looking at each of them. Have you seen or heard anything strange? Jorge nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, sir. I've seen figures in the mirrors, shadows that move on their own. And sometimes I hear whispers, as if someone is talking to me. Clara seemed nervous, wringing her hands. I've heard stories about the old owner, Enrique Montero. They say he conducted strange experiments, that the mirrors were part of some kind of ritual. Enrique Montero believed that the mirrors could capture souls, Lucas explained, and it seems someone here continued his experiments. Carlos looked at the staff, his eyes full of suspicion. Someone here knows more than they are saying, and we need to find out who it is. Suddenly the lights flickered and went out, plunging everyone into darkness. A scream pierced the air, and Lucas felt a presence beside him. The light returned, revealing a hooded figure with a knife in hand. "Run!" shouted Lucas, as the figure advanced. Everyone scattered, running in different directions. Lucas pulled Helena and Carlos, guiding them to a side room. We need to hide and figure out who's behind this. They hid behind a heavy curtain, watching the hooded figure swiftly pass by in the corridor. Helena trembled with fear, while Carlos seemed ready to confront the attacker. We need to split up, Lucas said. Carlos, take Helena to a safe place. I'll go after this person. Carlos hesitated but nodded. Be careful, Lucas. Lucas silently left their hiding place, following the hooded figure through the mansion's dark corridors. His heart was racing, but his mind was focused. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, but he also felt the danger drawing nearer. The figure stopped in front of a large mirror, reciting something in an ancient language. Lucas watched, trying to understand what was happening. Suddenly the mirror began to glow, and the figure turned, revealing a familiar face. You, Lucas murmured, his eyes wide. Why? Because these souls are power, the figure replied, their voice cold and calculating. And I will be immortal. Chapter 8. Hidden Connections. Lucas stared at the hooded figure, the attacker's face now visible under the flickering light of the mirror. It was Clara, the cook, with fixed eyes and a determined expression. Clara, why? Asked Lucas, trying to buy time as his mind raced to understand the situation. Enrique Montero was not mad, Clara said firmly. He discovered a secret, a power that no one else understood. I continued his experiments because I believe in what he was trying to achieve. You are imprisoning souls, said Lucas, his voice laden with incredulity and anger. That's inhumane. They are not just souls, Clara retorted, raising the knife. They are sources of power. With them, I can achieve immortality, something Enrique only dreamed of obtaining. Lucas took a step forward, trying to remain calm. This needs to stop, Clara. You are putting everyone in danger. I can't stop now, she responded, her eyes glowing with a desperate madness. I am so close. Suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. It was Helena and Carlos, who had returned to help Lucas. Lucas, "We're here!" shouted Carlos, running to the detective's side. "Clara, what are you doing?" Clara laughed bitterly. "You never understood. You always treated me like a simple servant. But I knew about the power this mansion holds." Helena took a step forward, her voice trembling. "Clara, stop this. We don't need immortality. We need peace." "It's too late for that," said Clara, raising the knife again. But before she could act, Lucas lunged forward, disarming her with a quick strike. The knife fell to the ground, and Clara stood there panting and defeated. Lucas turned to Helena and Carlos. "We need to destroy these mirrors. They are the source of all this evil." "But how?" asked Carlos, looking at the glowing mirrors around them. Lucas thought for a moment, then remembered the old letters they had found. Enrique wrote about a ritual to free the souls. We need to follow his instructions. They returned to the library and found Enrique Monteiro's diary. Lucas quickly flipped through the pages, finding the ritual they were seeking. "Here it is. We need candles, salt, and this." He showed a small golden key hidden between the pages. "Where's this key?" asked Helena, anxious. "It must be somewhere in the mansion," replied Lucas. "Let's search together." They split up to search for the key. Lucas went to the attic, a dark and dusty place full of forgotten antiques. He felt a chill as he entered, as if he were being watched. Rummaging through boxes and trunks, he finally found a small golden box. Inside was the key. "I found it!" shouted Lucas, running back to the main hall. Helena and Carlos were already there, preparing the rest of the items for the ritual. Lucas positioned the candles around the mirrors and spread the salt according to the diary's instructions. "Now we need to recite the incantation." Together, they began to recite the ancient words. The air grew heavy, and the mirrors started to vibrate. The trapped figures in the mirrors appeared, their expressions of relief and gratitude visible as they were freed. Suddenly, a blinding flash filled the room, and the mirrors shattered simultaneously. When the light dissipated, everything was silent. The souls had been freed. Clara was on her knees, crying. "What have I done?" she whispered, remorseful. Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder. "Now you can find peace. We will take care of the rest." Chapter 9. The Climax. The main hall was filled with a nearly palpable tension. The shards of shattered mirrors scattered across the floor reflected fragments of candlelight, creating a ghostly scene. Lucas, Helena, and Carlos breathed deeply, feeling the weight of what they had just done. Clara, still on her knees, looked at the pieces of mirrors with a mixture of regret and relief. "It's almost over," said Lucas, his voice low but firm. "But we still need to ensure that the curse doesn't repeat." Suddenly, the silence was broken by a strange sound coming from the mansion's basement. A low, almost moaning sound seemed to come from the depths of the house. "Did you hear that?" asked Helena, her eyes wide with fear. "Yes," replied Carlos, his voice tense. "It's coming from the basement. I've never liked that place." "We need to investigate," said Lucas, already heading towards the door leading to the basement. "There might be something down there that still holds the evil of this house." They descended the dark, narrow basement stairs, each step echoing against the stone walls. The air was cold and damp, filled with the smell of mold and decay. When they reached the bottom, they found a large room full of old, forgotten objects. In the center of the room stood a large mirror, different from the others. This one was intact, with an ornate golden frame and strange symbols engraved around it. "This mirror," Helena began, her voice trembling. "It's different from the others. It seems more powerful." Lucas approached cautiously, shining his flashlight on the mirror. "This must be the original mirror, the first one Enrique Montero brought. We need to destroy it too." Clara, who had followed the group silently, spoke in a weak voice. "That's the mirror Enrique used to start everything. He believed this mirror was the key to capturing souls. "Then let's finish what we started," said Lucas, taking the golden key he had found in the attic. He noticed a small keyhole at the base of the mirror's frame. He inserted the key into the lock and, with a slow turn, heard a click. The mirror began to vibrate and emit a pulsating light. The figures that had previously been in the other mirrors began to emerge, now more defined and real. Suddenly, a larger and more imposing figure appeared in the mirror. Henrique Montero, with an expression of despair and anger, reached out as if he wanted to pull them into the mirror. "You cannot end this!" shouted Enrique, his voice echoing through the room. "This power is rightfully mine." Lucas stood firm, reciting the final words of the ritual with renewed strength. Helena and Carlos joined him, their voices rising in unison. The light from the mirror intensified until a blinding flash filled the room. When the light finally dissipated, the mirror was destroyed, reduced to shards, like the others. The figures had disappeared, and a heavy silence filled the air. Lucas turned to Helena and Carlos. "It's done. The curse is broken." Clara was sobbing softly, but there was evident relief in her eyes. "Thank you. You have freed me too." Lucas nodded, tired, but satisfied. "Let's get out of here. This mansion has seen too much evil for a lifetime." Chapter 10. Reflections and New Beginnings. The first light of dawn began to filter through the dusty windows of the mansion of mirrors. Lucas, Helena, Carlos, and Clara were gathered in the main hall, exhausted but relieved. The sound of morning birds replaced the oppressive silence that had once dominated the house. "It's all right now," said Lucas, looking at the tired faces around him. "The evil has been banished, and the souls have been freed." Helena sighed, letting herself collapse into a nearby chair. "It's hard to believe all of this really happened, but I feel like I can finally breathe." Carlos nodded, sitting beside her. "We need to decide what to do with this house. It carries too much pain." Clara, her eyes swollen from crying, approached Lucas. I can't express how sorry I am for everything I did. I was blinded by ambition and fear." Lucas placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, his expression compassionate. "What's important is that you help to fix things. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do to correct them." They began to clean up the debris from the shattered mirrors, each piece symbolizing a part of the curse that had been broken. As they worked together, the heavy atmosphere that had once permeated the mansion seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of renewal. Later, Lucas, Helena, and Carlos gathered on the front porch, watching the sun slowly rise on the horizon. "So, what comes next?" asked Helena, turning to Lucas. "Now," said Lucas, lighting a cigarette, "you can start anew. Transform this mansion into a place of peace, not terror. As for me, I think there are many other mysteries out there that need solving." Carlos smiled, shaking Lucas's hand. "You'll always have a place here if you need it." Lucas returned the smile, his eyes reflecting gratitude. "Thank you, but my journey calls me. There are many shadows that still need to be uncovered." Helena stepped forward, wrapping Lucas in a hug. "Thank you for everything, Lucas. You saved more than our house. You saved our lives." Lucas nodded, his eyes becoming a bit misty. "It was an honor to help. Remember to keep the light on and the shadows at bay." With one last look at the mansion that had held so many secrets, Lucas descended the steps and walked towards his car. As he drove along the winding roads, the weight of the case began to lift from his shoulders. He knew there would be other cases, other mysteries. But, for now, he had brought peace to a tormented place. The morning wind blew gently, and Lucas smiled to himself. The world was full of mysteries, but also of renewed hopes, and he was ready to face whatever came next.